This week's Parashat Vayigash begins with Yehuda approaching Yosef. What happened in last week's Parasha is that Yosef had placed a magical goblet in the sack of his youngest brother, the youngest of the brothers, Binyamin. Binyamin, of course, is Yosef's real full brother. They share the same mother, Rachel. And as they're leaving, Yosef sent someone after them to retrieve his stolen goblet. The brothers deny responsibility. At first they say whoever took it should die and will be slaves as well. And they search the sacks and they discover the goblet in the sack of Binyamin, the youngest son. At which point Yehuda speaks up at the end of the Parashat of Miketz, and Yehuda says, "Man omar Adoni, man nedaber, man nitztadak." Yehuda says, after they return to the house of Yosef, what are we going to say? Elohim matzat avon avadecha. God has found out the sin of your servants, referring to himself and the brothers. Hinenu avadim Adoni. We'll all be your slaves, both the one in whose sack the goblet was found, and the rest of us. And Joseph says, no, God forbid. The one in whom the goblet was found shall be my slave. The others can go home in peace to their father. At which point we have our parsha, Vayigash elav Yehuda. Yehuda approaches Yosef and pleads for his brother Binyamin. In the story of the discovery of this magical goblet, I would say that it's fairly clear in the Torah that Yehuda knows that Binyamin did not steal the goblet. The reason I say that is because the Torah also says that Yosef instructed the person in charge of his house to return the money that was brought down to buy food. And it says they searched through all of the sacks, so presumably they saw the money there as well. They understand that something odd is happening over here. I think Yehuda knows that Benjamin didn't steal anything. Yehuda's confession, however, what can we say? How can we justify ourselves? God has found us out. Matzat avon avadecha. I think the confession is not about stealing the goblet. The confession is about the story that lies behind the Joseph story, which is the brothers throwing Joseph into the pit from which Joseph is taken and sold as a slave. That's what lies behind the entire story. Now, Yehuda is going to plead with Yosef for Binyamin. The speech of Yehuda, which is quite long, in the beginning of our parsha, says nothing about Benjamin's innocence, not a word, nor about anybody's innocence. The speech of Yehuda is focused on one thing: the relationship between their father Yaakov and this child Binyamin. We know that earlier Joseph more than once has asked about, how was your old father? Is he all right? Yehuda probably senses that Yosef cares about Yaakov, so he pleads not for Binyamin, but he describes the impact that Binyamin's loss would have on their father Yaakov. And it's interesting, throughout the speech, what the speech employs on several occasions is a kind of purposeful ambiguity. Judah speaks of Jacob and his son Benjamin being tied together as one v'nafsho, his soul, not clear which of the two souls. Kishura b'nafsho is bound up with the other one's soul. Or, for example, if we come back and the boy is not with us, v'meit, he will die. Does it mean that Jacob will die upon not seeing Binyamin, or does it mean Ki'in hanar v'meit, if we come back, that the child is not there and presumed dead? And there's several other instances here of a purposeful ambiguity. The purpose of the purposeful ambiguity is to create a full identification between Yaakov on one hand and Binyamin on the other. I want to focus on something else that Judah says to Joseph. Judah says to Joseph, in explaining why he steps forward over here, the reason he's stepping forward, he says at the end, is I took responsibility for my brother. But prior to that, he says, when we went back to see our father, after Joseph had taken Shimon as a captive, they had gone back, and they told their father that we can't go back to Egypt unless we bring our youngest son Binyamin with us. Our father resisted. Judah reports to Joseph that Jacob had said to them, Atem yedatem ki shnayim yodoli ishti. You know Judah said to Joseph, our father had said, my wife, she had 2 sons, one of whom is missing and presumed dead, and this is the only one I have left. In fact, earlier, Judah describes the son who's remaining as Vayivater hu levado. He was left alone. The expression Vayivater hu levado is how the Torah describes Jacob prior to his wrestling match with the Ish, with the angel, with the man, prior to entering the land. Another identification. But the point I want to make is that the story of Joseph is about a reconciliation of a family. It's not just Joseph and the brothers. It's Jacob and all his children. It's the children in Jacob. And I think an important step in reconciliation is coming to accept certain features of the other. When Judah says to Joseph, let me say something to you. My father had a wife and she had 2 children. And they're standing, the 10 of them in front of Joseph, 11 of them in front of Joseph. What Judah's really saying is, you have to understand my father. He loved one woman, Rachel. The other woman was an accident, was a mistake, was a subterfuge. So you have to understand why this particular child will mean so much. And we accept it. Judah's speech is an acceptance of that reality. It's not a reality we might want, but it's the way he is. It's not going to change. We have to deal with the other the way they are. And the ability to deal with the other the way they are, actually, in the story of Joseph and the brothers, is part and parcel of the reconciliation, the healing that this family must go through in order to become one. So it's the recognition of the special place that Binyamin has in the life of Jacob because of Jacob's history, because of the way the family has been formed, the various conflicts. And the fact is, Shnayim Yodoli Ishti, Judah's ability to accept that is an essential feature of Judah's ability to bring the entire family together. Shabbat Shalom.